If you're like me, you probably hate throwing away fabric scraps. So today I have 5 projects for you that use even the tiniest little scraps. The first one is a fabric coin pouch. These coin pouches are just the right size for spare change and so easy to throw in a purse or other bag. Get the link for the templates in the description. For supplies, we'll need interfacing and 2 different fabrics, one for the main and one for the lining. The pattern piece is pretty small, so you just need little scraps. And then you'll need a zipper at least 5 inches long. We're going to start out by cutting out layers of the coin pouch with both of our fabrics. We'll need 2 of each, so I like to put them all on top of each other, pin that template on, and then cut out 4 layers, 2 of each fabric. Now we're going to fuse the interfacing to the back of the main fabric. Now we're going to start assembly. Lay your zipper with the teeth face down on your main fabric piece, lining up the zipper tape with the top of the fabric. Then put your lining right on top of that, making sure they're aligned at the top of the zipper. Pin the layers together and then we're ready to sew. Use a regular presser foot for this, but align the needle all the way to the left closest to the teeth. After you've sewn it, fold those pieces out of the way so you have access to the other side of the zipper tape. Grab the other main piece and put it face down, lined up right where the other one is at the top of the zipper tape, and put the lining at the back. Pin the layers together and then sew them the same way you did with the first side. Now we're going to top stitch along the edge of the zipper tape. So we're going to fold all the layers out of the way except for one main piece, and then we're going to sew 1/8 inch from that edge of the fabric. Repeat this on the other side too. Now we're ready to start assembly. First, we're going to open the zipper part way, not all the way, but part way so it's in the middle of our pouch. And now we're going to fold the main fabrics on top of each other so that they're facing with the right sides together, and do the same for the lining. Line up all the edges and corners and pin. When you get to the zipper, we're going to pinch that with the zipper teeth facing down toward the lining. Now we're ready to sew. For this zipper pouch, we're only going to sew both of the sides, from the top of the lining down to the main, and then on the other side as well. So we want to backstitch at the ends. Both of the bottoms will be open. Remove your pins, and then we're going to clip off the edges of the zipper. Now we're going to flip the lining fabric onto the main fabric. So we have it inside out, but we can line up those bottom edges. So these bottom edges are open, so we want to line them up along the side seams and the bottom so that they match up. Now pin that bottom edge and sew along the bottom, backstitching at the ends. After you've sewn that, trim your seam allowance down, and if you want to, you can serge or zigzag stitch the bottom seam allowance. The next step is to give the coin pouch some shape. So we're going to go in and pinch those corners, making sure the side seams are straight, and then measure up 3/4 inches perpendicular to that seam and draw a line. Put a few pins in there and then repeat on the other side, and then sew over those lines, making sure to backstitch. After you've sewn those, you can trim the corners off just to get rid of that excess fabric. And then turn the pouch right side out. Your zipper pouch is done and ready to fill up with all your spare change. The second project is a hand sanitizer holder. This little pouch holds a standard travel size hand sanitizer and has a keychain clip so you can keep it handy. You're going to need scraps for the outside fabric backed with interfacing, lining fabric, 1/2 inch bias tape that's single fold, a swivel clip, and cam snaps. You'll also need a way to mark your fabric and quilt basting spray. Use the pattern piece to mark the opening where our hand sanitizer top's going to go. And then we're going to lay the main fabric down on the lining fabric and pin around those markings. Adjust your stitch length down to 2 millimeters and sew around the rectangle, pivoting at the corners. Now grab your scissors and clip into the rectangle, focusing on the corners. Trim off the extra seam allowance and then make sure to clip those corners so we get a really nice straight rectangle. Now we're going to turn this right side out by pushing one layer through that hole so that we get the layers wrong sides together. Give it a good press, focusing on the rectangle. Now you can test it out with your hand sanitizer. Now we're going to finish the straight edge, which will be right here on the hand sanitizer holder. So you can decide which fabric you want on the outside at this point. We are going to fold under these edges 1/4 inch each and press. Make sure they're lined up really well, and then we're going to sew these together with a top stitch. Once that edge is finished, we're going to finish the other side, which will be the top flap. First, fold the pouch so that the rectangle at the bottom matches up and is symmetrical, and then we're going to mark the two sides at the top. These markings are going to show us where to put the bias tape so that we get it all the way around the top flap. So you're going to start putting the bias tape on right over. We're going to sandwich over the 2 layers of fabric, starting about 1/2 inch past that mark. First though, we're going to spray baste this. Spray baste will give it a little stickiness, and that'll help us hold the bias tape as we put it on around that curve. So spray it a little bit, and then we're just going to sandwich those layers of fabric, focusing on keeping that curve nice and smooth. Once you get the bias tape past that other mark, trim it off, and then we're going to top stitch around this real close to the edge of the bias tape. We're almost ready to assemble, but first we need to do the little tab that will hold our swivel clip on. So take your tab piece and fold in the long sides and then press. They should meet in the middle, and then fold them in half again and then top stitch the strip to keep it together. Now we're ready to assemble, so grab your swivel clip and thread it on and fold in half, matching those ends. Then we're going to fold our bag inside out and make sure to match up the bottom rectangle. Pin the sides of the pouch to hold it together, and then before we sew, we're going to stick the keychain swivel tab in. So we want this about 1/2 inch from the top edge of that fabric flap, but we want it to be on the inside of what we're doing right now. So I like to kind of decide where we're going to put it while it's turned inside out, and then pick up that flap and put it right under there and pin. Now we're going to sew from the top flap all the way down on both sides with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure you back stitch really well at the top and the bottom of each of those seams. Next, we're going to pinch the bottom edges, so put your hand into that pouch while it's still inside out. We're just going to make a little bit of dimension by pinching the edge and sewing across it. So perpendicular to your side seam, you're going to want to pinch and create that triangle, and then you can pin it and mark 3/8 inch from the point of the triangle and draw a line across. Repeat on the other side and then sew across those lines, back stitching well. When you're done, you can trim off the extra fabric. Now turn the pouch right side out. The last step is to add a cam snap. So fold your flap over and mark a little spot for the first cam snap. I like to just push that in and then add the backing, and then we'll use this first snap to find the placement for the second. If you've never used cam snaps before, these are super fun and easy to place. Once you have the first one in, fold over the flap again to get the right placement and push down on that cam snap really well so that it leaves a mark where the next one should go. So I like to push it down, find the mark on your fabric, and then use a marker or chalk to mark the point. And with that step, it's done. The third project is a dog poop bag dispenser. This little bag clips to your leash and has a slit in the back of the pouch to dispense the bags. Download the pattern piece on my website and print it off at 100% scale. You can use the 1-inch square to make sure that you have printed it at the correct size. You're going to need fabric scraps, a 5-inch or longer zipper, a swivel hook with a D-ring, and lightweight fusible interfacing. Use your pattern piece to cut out 2 dispenser sides, 2 zipper sides, and 1 little tab. All of these should be backed with interfacing. We're going to start with the zipper side pieces. I like to lay them out how they're going to go on my zipper and then fold them down so that the right sides of the zipper are matching the right side of the fabric. Pin and sew along that edge as close to the zipper teeth as you can with a regular zipper foot. Repeat on the other side. Then press and top stitch close to where the fabric meets the zipper. Now we're going to sew the tab piece. This will hold our swivel clip on. Fold under 1/4 inch on the long edges of the tab and press. Then fold in half to match up the folded edges and press again. Top stitch on both sides of the tab to hold it together. Then slip your D-ring onto the tab and fold over, matching the edges. Pin the swivel to the bottom of the zipper and baste it in place with the edges of the tab hanging over about 1/4 inch from the other fabric. Trim off the excess fabric and zipper tape. Next, we're going to work on the dispenser side. This side has a slit in it for your bags to come through. So take your dispenser side pieces and fold them in half and pressing down on that fold. We just want to make a crease right now. Once they're creased, open them up and pin together with right sides together. Grab your pattern piece and we're going to use this to mark where the dispenser is going to go. So I like to fold it in half. There are lines on that pattern piece and we're just going to mark where the stitching lines end in the middle of the crease on the dispenser pattern pieces. Then use a ruler to connect those. So this is where we're going to sew. Sew down those purple lines, making sure to backstitch. So when you open that up, you'll see that there is a little hole there in the middle of the dispenser, and that is where our bags can come through. To make this stronger, we're going to top stitch around that opening about 1/8 of an inch from the slit. I like to backstitch on the top and bottom edges just to give it a little bit more stability. Now we're ready to assemble. Put the dispenser side face down on the rest of the pouch, and then we're going to line up all the fabric corners. Make sure you open the zipper before you sew this so that we have a way to turn it right side out. And also make sure the swivel tab is facing inside toward the zipper. After you have that sandwich assembled, we're going to sew all the straight edges, leaving the corners open. Trim down the seam allowance and cut off that remaining zipper tape. With the bag still inside out, hold it up and pinch the corners so that they are perpendicular to the side seams. You can kind of just push the bag corner together as shown. Sew across that edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the ends. Repeat that with all 4 corners. Then turn the pouch right side out through the zipper. Now it's ready to fill up with doggy bags and be clipped to a leash. Next we have a Pom Pom Pin Cushion. This project uses the tiniest scraps and has a fun pom-pom on top. You'll need interfacing, a pom-pom maker and yarn, and scrap fabric. You can also print off the pattern pieces from my website. Cut 1 hexagon back and 6 triangles. You can use any fabrics for these. We're going to start by sewing the triangles together. You'll notice that the pattern piece has a blunt edge at the bottom. That edge is going to be the center of the pincushion. So lay 2 of the triangles together and sew along that edge, and then press open and add the 3rd. Press well and repeat for the other 3 triangles. Now we're going to sew these 2 pieces together, flip one up onto the other with the right sides together and sew down that seam. Press the seam open on the back. Now we're going to fuse interfacing to the back and the top of this pincushion. Make sure your interfacing is face up with the sticky side up, and just trace around your fabric with scissors. This will get you a really accurate piece of interfacing. You can also use the templates. Fuse to the back of the fabric. Repeat with the pincushion back. Grab the top of the pincushion and your template, and we're going to put this on and just trim off any sides that were a little bit too big. Sometimes this happens when you're piecing fabric, and it's okay, we'll just correct it by trimming. Now put your 2 sides together with right side spacing and pin. Sew around the edge 1/4 inch from the edge, pivoting at each corner and leaving one of those triangles open. After you've sewn it, we're going to trim off the points of that seam allowance and trim down the seam allowance just a little bit. Then flip it right side out using a point turner to help you. Now press it well. When you get to the opening, flip under the fabric to line it up with the edges. Now use Fiberfill stuffing to stuff this as much as you want. When you've stuffed it to your liking, grab a needle and thread, and we're going to hand stitch this closed using a ladder stitch. The last step is to add a yarn pom-pom. Use your pom-pom making tool and wrap the yarn around each of the colored sides. Close the pom-pom maker and cut through the yarn as shown. Use a loose piece of yarn to tie the pom-pom strands together. Once you have a double knot, open the pom-pom maker to reveal your pom-pom. You might need to trim it up a little bit, and then we'll use a hand needle to sew it to the top of the pincushion. Now your pincushion is ready to be used.
And finally, with the rest of our scraps, we're going to make doll sleeping bags.
These sleeping bags fit tiny plastic dolls and animals and are super fun to make and play with. Find 2 favorite fabric scraps and then print off the template from my website. The link's in the description. We're also going to need a tiny bit of stuffing for the pillow. Cut 2 layers from the sleeping bag pattern. These will be mirror image of each other. Then lay them on top of each other, lining up all the edges. We're going to sew all the way around this pattern piece, leaving this little edge open about 1 inch. This will be the side of our sleeping bag, and we'll close it later. After you've sewn that, clip the corners and trim the edges of the seam allowance. Turn it right side out through your opening. Once you have it turned, give it a good press and fold under the opening edges where you left that hole. Now this part is going to be the pillow, so we're going to stuff a little bit of Fiberfill stuffing up there in that pillow through the opening that we left. So push it up and get it out of the way of that pillow, and then we're going to just sew across that line to hold it up there. You can draw a line with a fabric marker if it helps. The last step is to fold over the sleeping bag so that the edges match up like so. We're going to sew across the side and bottom, so pin those in place, and then as we sew, we're going to close the opening. Now your dolls are ready for their sleepover.
Thanks for sewing with me today. For more great projects, click the video above.